Dr. Olivia Carter, a dedicated pediatrician and loving mother, boards a plane to Dallas with her family, hoping for a simple trip filled with laughter and new memories. But what begins as an ordinary flight soon unfolds into a transformative journey. From unexpected encounters with strangers to moments of profound reflection, Olivia navigates subtle challenges, surprising kindness, and a growing connection with someone she least expected. Along the way, she confronts old wounds, learns the power of forgiveness, and discovers how small acts of compassion can change everything. Join Olivia as her family's trip becomes more than just a getaway. It becomes a story of resilience, growth, and the healing power of human connection. What happens in the skies and beyond will leave a lasting impact not only on Olivia, but on everyone she meets. Dr. Olivia Carter adjusted her glasses and glanced at the clock on the microwave as she packed the last of the snacks into her children's carry-on bags. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window of their suburban Chicago home, illuminating the breakfast table where her husband Marcus and their two kids, Ethan and Grace, sat. Ethan, 10 years old and brimming with energy, was animatedly discussing the airplanes he had seen online, while Grace, a quite 8-year-old, doodled in her notebook. "Are you ready for this, Lip?" Marcus asked, his voice steady and reassuring as always. Olivia smiled, though her mind was a whirlwind. This trip to Dallas was supposed to be a break from her demanding life as a pediatrician, a chance to reconnect with family and create memories with her own. Yet, as the family prepared to leave, a familiar anxiety crept in. The Carters had splurged on first-class tickets for the first time, a choice Olivia hoped would make the experience special for their kids. But in the back of her mind, she feared the judgment of strangers, the subtle glances and unspoken questions she had faced countless times before. "We're ready," Olivia replied firmly, more to herself than Marcus. "Let's make it a trip to remember." The drive to the airport was filled with the kids' chatter, Marcus's steady hand on the wheel, and Olivia's constant mental checklist. As they navigated the busy terminal, Olivia held Grace's hand tightly while Marcus guided Ethan, who was mesmerized by the bustling scene around him. At the check-in counter, the agent smiled warmly at the family. "Enjoy your flight," she said, scanning their first-class tickets. "Thank you," Olivia replied, feeling a flicker of pride. They had worked hard for this moment. As they approached the gate, Ethan tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, are we really flying first class? Like the fancy seats?" "Yes, sweetheart," Olivia said with a smile. "But remember, it is not about the seats. It is about how we behave. Politeness and respect." Okay, Ethan said, standing a little taller. Grace nodded solemnly, clutching her stuffed bunny. "I will be good, Mom." "You're already good," Olivia said, giving her a gentle squeeze. The boarding announcement crackled over the intercom, and the Carters made their way onto the plane. The first-class cabin felt serene, with its wide leather seats and soft lighting. Olivia helped Grace into her seat and passed Ethan his tablet while Marcus stored their carry-ons in the overhead compartment. Settling into her own seat, Olivia allowed herself a rare moment of relaxation. But as she glanced around the cabin, she caught the eyes of an older woman seated a row behind them. The woman, dressed impeccably in a beige cardigan and pearls, was watching them closely. Her husband, seated beside her, seemed more interested in his crossword puzzle. Olivia forced a polite smile and turned her attention to Grace, who was carefully arranging her crayons on the tray table. But the weight of the woman's gaze lingered, stirring an unease Olivia couldn't quite shake. The flight attendant, Lily, appeared with a warm smile. "Good morning, welcome aboard. Can I get you something to drink?" "Water, please," Olivia said. Lily crouched to Grace's level. "And what about you, sweetheart?" "Apple juice, please," Grace replied softly. "Coming right up," Lily said, her cheerful tone putting Olivia at ease. As Lily moved on, Olivia overheard a whispered exchange behind her. "Do you think they are in the right cabin?" the woman murmured to her husband. "Barbara," the man replied, his tone a mix of reproach and weariness. Olivia's chest tightened. She focused on helping Grace open her juice, willing herself to ignore the comment. Marcus leaned toward her, sensing her tension. "Let it go, Liv," he said gently. She nodded, but the words lingered. It wasn't the first time Olivia had felt out of place in spaces like this, where her achievements seemed invisible to those who judge her by appearance alone. She reminded herself of the life she had built, her career, her family, her integrity. Still, the sting of prejudice always found its way in. As the plane began to taxi, Ethan looked over excitedly. "Mom, do you think we'll feel the takeoff?" "You might," Olivia said, grateful for the distraction. "It feels like a little push." Ethan grinned and pressed his face to the window. Beside him, Grace clutched her bunny a little tighter. "It's okay, sweetheart," Marcus said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. The plane lifted off smoothly, the city below shrinking into a patchwork of tiny streets and buildings. For a moment, Olivia allowed herself to breathe. Once the seatbelt sign turned off, the cabin settled into a quiet rhythm. Passengers reclined in their seats, some tapping away on laptops while others browsed magazines or watched movies. Olivia opened a book she had brought, but found her mind wandering. The woman behind her, Barbara, she recalled, was speaking in low tones to her husband again. This time, Olivia caught snippets of conversation about their grandchildren and an upcoming anniversary trip. Despite the rocky start, Barbara's voice held a warmth that reminded Olivia of her own mother. Across the aisle, a young man in a crisp suit glanced over at Marcus. "Is that a work tablet or just for fun?" he asked, nodding toward the device Marcus was holding. "A little of both," Marcus replied, his easy smile inviting further conversation. The man laughed. "That's how it always starts." He introduced himself as Adam, an IT consultant, and the two men quickly struck up a conversation. Olivia watched them, feeling a flicker of hope. Moments like these reminded her that connection was possible, even in the unlikeliest circumstances. Ethan tapped her arm. "Mom, can I watch this movie?" he asked, showing her the screen. "Sure, but keep the volume low," Olivia said. As Ethan adjusted his headphones, Olivia glanced back at Barbara. Their eyes met briefly, and this time, Barbara didn't look away. Instead, she offered a small nod, almost imperceptible, but enough to shift something in Olivia's heart. Olivia returned the gesture, a tentative bridge forming between them. When the flight attendant returned with a tray of snacks, Ethan chose pretzels, and Grace asked shyly for cookies. Olivia was about to decline when Lily leaned in and said, "You are doing a great job with them. They are so well-behaved." The unexpected kindness caught Olivia off guard. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer than she intended. "It is true," Lily said with a wink before moving on. Marcus, noticing the exchange, reached over and squeezed Olivia's hand. "See? Not everyone is judging." She nodded, her throat tight with emotion. Maybe this flight would be more than just a trip to Dallas. Maybe it would be a journey towards something greater, a reminder of the resilience and kindness that had always carried her through. The plane leveled out at cruising altitude, and a peaceful hum filled the cabin. The passengers seemed to settle into their own routines, some immersed in movies, others absorbed in books or idle conversation. Olivia glanced over at Ethan, who was already deeply engrossed in his tablet, and Grace, who was quietly coloring in her notebook. "Look at them," Marcus whispered with a smile, leaning closer to Olivia. "You'd think they've been flying first class all their lives." Olivia chuckled softly, though her mind lingered on the earlier comment she had overheard. It wasn't outright hostility, no one had directly confronted her or her family, but the undertones of judgment gnawed at her. She had faced this before in conference rooms, patient meetings, and even casual social settings. Yet it still stung. As Olivia tried to refocus on her book, a sudden jolt shook the plane. Gasps rippled through the cabin as the seatbelt sign illuminated, followed by the captain's calm announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing some turbulence. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." Olivia instinctively reached for Grace's hand. "It's okay, sweetie," she said gently. Grace's wide eyes filled with tears, and she gripped her stuffed bunny tightly. Ethan looked over, his face pale. Marcus leaned in. "It's just a little bump in the air, kids. Planes are built for this." From behind, Barbara spoke softly to her husband, but her words were drowned out by the low rumble of the plane. To Olivia's surprise, Richard turned toward their row, holding out a small toy airplane to Grace. "This might help," he said kindly, his weathered face creased with a reassuring smile. Grace hesitated, looking at Olivia for approval. Olivia nodded, smiling warmly at Richard. "Thank you," she said. "It's my grandson's," Richard explained. "He left it behind last time he visited. I think he'd like to know it helped someone." Grace took the toy and held it in her lap, her grip on the bunny loosening slightly. The tension in Olivia's chest began to ease. As the turbulence subsided, the flight attendant, Lily, passed through the cabin to check on passengers. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked Grace, kneeling at her level. Grace nodded, holding up the toy plane. "This helped." Lily smiled and glanced at Richard. "That was very thoughtful of you," she said. Richard shrugged modestly, but his expression softened as he exchanged a look with Olivia. For the first time, Barbara spoke directly to Olivia. "Turbulence always gets to me too," she said, her voice gentler than before. "It's not my favorite part of flying either," Olivia admitted, managing a small laugh. Barbara nodded, and though the conversation was brief, it felt like a shift. The flight smoothed out, and soon the seatbelt sign was turned off. Olivia noticed a young mother in the economy section struggling with a fussy baby. The woman bounced the infant on her knee, her face flushed with frustration. Olivia pressed the call button. When Lily arrived, Olivia leaned in. "That mom in economy, do you think she could use some help? Maybe a little extra attention might make her flight easier." Lily glanced toward the mother and nodded. "I'll see what I can do." A few minutes later, Olivia saw Lily return to the mother with a warm smile and a small bag of snacks and a toy for the baby. The mother's relief was palpable, and she mouthed a thank you toward Olivia, who gave a small wave in return. "That was kind of you," Marcus said quietly. Olivia shrugged, just paying it forward. As the flight continued, Ethan struck up a conversation with a teenager across the aisle, who was fiddling with a tablet. "Is that the new model?" Ethan asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. The boy, who introduced himself as Jake, nodded. "Yeah, want me to show you how it works?" Ethan looked at Olivia for permission, and she nodded. Soon, the two boys were engrossed in comparing games and features, their laughter breaking through the cabin's quiet hum. Olivia watched them with a mix of pride and gratitude. It was these small connections, unexpected moments of kindness and camaraderie that reminded her of the good in people. Toward the end of the flight, Barbara leaned forward again. "You're a doctor, aren't you?" she asked, her tone curious but respectful. "Yes," Olivia replied. "My son was a doctor," Barbara said, her voice tinged with both pride and sadness. "He passed away a few years ago. I suppose I have a soft spot for people in your profession. I'm sorry for your loss," Olivia said sincerely. Barbara smiled faintly. "Thank you. He loved helping people, just like you seem to." The words caught Olivia off guard, and she felt a lump form in her throat. She realized that Barbara's earlier judgment might have stemmed more from grief and misunderstanding than malice. As the plane began its descent, Olivia found herself reflecting on the day's events. The turbulence had been literal and figurative, but the kindness she had witnessed from Richard's thoughtful gesture to Jake's friendly connection with Ethan had begun to dissolve the barriers she had felt earlier. The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing their approach to Dallas. Marcus helped the kids stow their tablets, and Olivia checked their carry-ons one last time. As the wheels touched down, Olivia felt a sense of calm she hadn't expected. This flight had been more than just a trip to a family reunion. It had been a reminder that, even in moments of discomfort and uncertainty, kindness had a way of breaking through. The plane taxied smoothly to the gate, and passengers began shifting in their seats, ready to disembark. Ethan bounced excitedly, eager to tell his grandparents about the flight, while Grace sat quietly, still holding the toy plane Richard had given her. Olivia took a deep breath, reflecting on the brief yet poignant interactions she had experienced during the flight. Barbara leaned forward as Olivia stood to retrieve her bag from the overhead compartment. "Your children are wonderful," she said, her tone warmer than Olivia had expected. "You must be very proud." Olivia turned to face her, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Thank you. That means a lot." Barbara hesitated, then added, I may have made some assumptions earlier. I am sorry." Olivia paused, surprised by the admission. "It's okay," she said after a moment. "We all have moments we are not proud of. Thank you for saying that." As the Carters stepped into the bustling terminal, the warmth of Barbara's words lingered in Olivia's mind. The apology was a small gesture, but it marked a significant shift in her perspective. For the first time in years, Olivia felt that her guarded approach to the world might not always be necessary. The airport was alive with activity families reuniting, travelers rushing to catch connecting flights, and the ever-present hum of announcements echoing through the space. Marcus took charge of the luggage while Olivia kept the children close. "Mom, can I keep this toy plane?" Grace asked, looking up at her with wide eyes. "Of course," Olivia said, smiling. "It's yours now." "I like Mr. Richard," Grace said simply, holding the plane tightly. "So do I," Olivia replied softly. As the family made their way to baggage claim, Olivia spotted the young mother from the economy section, now cradling a sleeping baby. The woman caught Olivia's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." Olivia waved back, her heart swelling. "She is grateful," Marcus said, noticing the exchange. "It was a small thing," Olivia replied, though deep down, she knew that even small kindnesses could ripple outward in ways she might never fully understand. At the carousel, Ethan tugged at Olivia's sleeve. "Mom, look, there is Mr. Richard and Miss Barbara." Olivia turned to see the older couple standing near the edge of the baggage claim area. Richard was pointing out a plane landing on the tarmac to Grace, who watched with fascination. Barbara noticed Olivia's gaze and offered a small wave. Olivia walked over, Grace and Ethan in tow. "Thank you again," Olivia said to Richard. Grace really appreciated the toy. "It was my pleasure," Richard said, his warm smile revealing the deep lines of a life well lived. Barbara glanced at Ethan, who was fidgeting with his backpack straps. "And what about you, young man? Did you enjoy the flight?" Ethan grinned. "It was awesome. I sat by the window and saw the clouds up close. And the food was pretty good too." Barbara laughed lightly. "Well, I'm glad to hear that." The carousel whirred to life, and Marcus began collecting their bags. Barbara and Richard lingered a moment longer, and then Richard extended his hand to Olivia. "It was a pleasure meeting you," he said sincerely. "Your family is lovely." "Thank you," Olivia replied, shaking his hand. "Safe travels." As Barbara and Richard departed, Olivia felt a tug of emotion she couldn't quite place. They had started as strangers, their interactions marred by tension and unspoken biases, but something had shifted. It was a reminder that people could change if only they allowed themselves the opportunity. Later, as the Carters rode to their hotel, Olivia stared out the window, lost in thought. The city skyline blurred past, a backdrop to her growing sense of clarity. "I think today was about more than just the flight," she said aloud, breaking the silence. Marcus glanced over. "What do you mean?" "Small moments," she replied. "Kindness, understanding. They matter. They build bridges where there were walls." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "And sometimes those bridges lead to places we never expected." At the hotel, the children immediately dove into their activities. Ethan unpacked his model airplanes, and Grace began coloring a new picture, the toy plane by her side. Marcus settled into a chair with a book, while Olivia sat at the desk, her laptop open but untouched. She thought about Barbara and Richard, about Lily the flight attendant, and even the young mother in economy. Each encounter had left an impression, challenging her to reconsider the armor she carried in her daily life. With a deep breath, Olivia opened a blank document and began typing. The words flowed easily, her thoughts crystallizing into a message she wanted to carry forward. Kindness can dissolve barriers, and connection can transform even the most unlikely moments. The next morning, Olivia woke to the sound of Ethan and Grace giggling in the adjoining room. She smiled, grateful for their lightheartedness. Marcus was still asleep, his steady breathing a comforting presence beside her. As Olivia prepared for the day, her thoughts returned to the flight and the unexpected connection she had made. She had been hesitant to accept Barbara's apology fully, but the woman's sincerity lingered in her mind. Olivia resolved to keep an open heart for the rest of their trip, if only for her children's sake. Later that afternoon, The Carters arrived at a Dallas park for a family picnic, part of the larger reunion they had traveled for. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, sizzling grills, and children playing. Olivia's relatives greeted them warmly, enveloping them in hugs and chatter. "Liv, you are finally here," her cousin Teresa exclaimed, pulling Olivia into a tight embrace. "It feels good to be home," Olivia admitted, a rare moment of vulnerability slipping through her polished demeanor. Marcus carried the cooler to a shaded table while Ethan and Grace ran off to join their cousins on the playground. The picnic buzzed with activity. Olivia found herself catching up with relatives she hadn't seen in years, their conversations punctuated by shared memories and laughter. Yet, she couldn't stop reflecting on her recent experience on the flight. It was as though something had shifted within her, a reminder of the power of small moments to shape perspective. "Earth to live," Teresa teased, nudging Olivia. "You seem distracted." "Just thinking," Olivia said with a smile. "This trip has been different. Good, but different." As the day wore on, Olivia sat quietly under a tree, watching her children. Grace had befriended a younger cousin, patiently teaching her how to draw. Ethan was helping a group of boys build an elaborate sandcastle. Marcus approached, holding a plate of food. "You okay?" he asked, handing her a sandwich. "Better than okay," Olivia replied. "Just taking it all in." "You've been quiet since the flight," Marcus observed. "What's on your mind?" "Kindness," Olivia said simply. "The way it can surprise you, change you. I think I forgot how powerful it can be." That evening, back at the hotel, Olivia checked her phone and noticed a notification. It was a message from the airline, thanking her for her assistance during the medical situation on the plane. She showed it to Marcus, who read it aloud. "Dear Dr. Carter, thank you for your quick thinking and compassion during yesterday's flight. Your actions reflect the best of what it means to travel together. We are grateful for your service." "That's nice of them," Marcus said. "It is," Olivia replied, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and humility. The next day, the family visited a local museum, exploring exhibits that celebrated innovation and resilience. Olivia couldn't help but draw parallels to her own life, the challenges she had faced, the bridges she had built, and the unexpected kindness that had illuminated her journey. At one exhibit, Grace tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, look," she exclaimed, pointing to a display about doctors who had made groundbreaking discoveries. Olivia knelt beside her. "What do you see?" "A picture of a lady doctor," Grace said. "Like you." Olivia smiled, her throat tightening. "Yes, sweetheart. Like me." Grace's eyes sparkled with admiration. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Olivia hugged her daughter tightly. "You can be anything you want to be." Later that evening, as the family gathered for dinner at a local restaurant, Olivia received another surprise. Barbara and Richard were seated a few tables away, chatting quietly over their meal. Barbara noticed Olivia and gave a hesitant wave. Olivia hesitated, but then stood, making her way over. "Good evening," Olivia said, her tone warm but measured. Barbara smiled, a flicker of relief crossing her face. "Dr. Carter, it is nice to see you again." "Likewise," Olivia replied. "How are you enjoying Dallas?" "We are visiting our daughter," Barbara explained. "She just had a baby." "Congratulations," Olivia said sincerely. Barbara hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about our conversation on the flight. I hope I didn't offend you." "You didn't," Olivia assured her. "It is not always easy to see things from another person's perspective, but I think we both tried, and that means something." Barbara nodded, her expression softening. "It does." As Olivia returned to her table, Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Making more bridges?" he teased. Olivia smiled. "Something like that." Over dinner, Ethan and Grace shared their favorite moments from the museum, their enthusiasm infectious. Olivia listened, her heart full. She realized that this trip had given her more than she had expected, not just memories, but a renewed faith in the goodness of people. That night, as she tucked the kids in a bed, Olivia reflected on the day. The walls she had built to protect herself were beginning to crumble, replaced by something stronger. The belief that kindness could change the world, one small act at a time. Olivia woke early the next morning, the dim light of dawn spilling through the curtains of their hotel room. While Marcus and the kids were still asleep, she slipped out of bed, poured herself a cup of coffee, and sat by the window. The events of the past few days played in her mind, stirring emotions she hadn't fully processed. She thought about Barbara's words on the flight, her guarded apology, and the unexpected connection they had shared at dinner the night before. Olivia had spent years navigating subtle and overt biases as a black woman in medicine moments when her competence was questioned or her presence was treated as an anomaly. These experiences had taught her to stay composed, to persevere, to excel in the face of doubt. Yet, they had also left her weary, her optimism guarded. Why is it so hard to let people in? She wondered aloud. She remembered a particularly difficult moment early in her career. A patient's family had refused to let her treat their child, insisting they wanted a second opinion from someone more experienced. Though Olivia was the most senior physician on duty, her professionalism never faltered, but the memory still stung, a reminder of how deeply assumptions could cut. As she sipped her coffee, Olivia realized that the interactions on the plane and Barbara's heartfelt words were slowly chipping away at the armor she had built. By mid-morning, the family was dressed and ready for another day. They had planned to visit a historic cultural district in Dallas, filled with art galleries, boutique shops, and local eateries. As they walked through the vibrant streets, Ethan spotted a bookstore and tugged on Olivia's arm. "Mom, can we go in? Please?" Olivia laughed. "Okay, but just for a little while." Inside, the smell of aged paper and fresh coffee filled the air. Grace immediately found a children's section, and Marcus wandered toward a shelf of biographies. Ethan browsed the science section, pulling out a book about airplanes. As Olivia helped Grace pick out a book, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me, are you Dr. Carter?" She turned to see a young woman holding a toddler. The woman's face lit up with recognition. "Yes, I am," Olivia said cautiously. "You probably don't remember me," the woman said, adjusting the child on her hip. "My son was one of your patients last year. He had severe asthma, and you helped us so much. I just wanted to say thank you." Olivia's heart swelled. "Of course, I remember. How is he doing now?" "He's great," the woman said, smiling. "We've kept up with the treatment plan you recommended, and he's been so much better. I really don't know what we would have done without you." The sincerity in the woman's voice brought a lump to Olivia's throat. "That means a lot to me. Thank you for saying so." As the woman walked away, Olivia felt a sense of validation she hadn't expected. Sometimes, the impact of her work seemed abstract, lost in the endless demands of her career. Moments like this reminded her why she had chosen this path. Later that afternoon, as the family sat down for lunch at an outdoor cafe, Olivia shared the encounter with Marcus. "That's not the first time someone has thanked you like that," Marcus said. "Maybe not, but it still feels rare," Olivia admitted. "It's easy to get caught up in the challenges and forget the good we do." Marcus nodded. "That's why it matters to hear it, because it reminds you of the bigger picture." As they ate, a familiar figure appeared on the street. Barbara and Richard were strolling hand in hand, pausing to admire the artwork displayed in a nearby gallery window. Olivia hesitated, unsure whether to approach them. Grace noticed them first. "Mom, look, it's Mr. Richard and Miss Barbara." Barbara spotted the Carters and waved. Encouraged by Grace's enthusiasm, Olivia waved back and gestured for them to join. Barbara smiled as they approached. "What a coincidence," she said. "Enjoying the city?" "We are," Olivia replied warmly. "How about you?" "It's lovely," Barbara said, glancing at Richard. "We were just talking about how much this reminds us of the trips we used to take with our children when they were young." "Your daughter must be busy with the baby," Marcus said, striking up the conversation. "She is," Barbara replied. "It's why we're here to help out as much as we can." As they talked, Olivia noticed how relaxed Barbara seemed, her earlier reservations nowhere to be found. The conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from travel stories to shared experiences as parents. At one point, Barbara turned to Olivia. "You mentioned on the flight that you're a doctor. I have to say, I admire what you do. It takes a special kind of person to care for others the way you do." Olivia felt the words land softly, a stark contrast to the assumptions Barbara had made just days ago. Thank you, she said. It isn't always easy, but it is rewarding. Barbara hesitated, then added, I think I've been carrying some of my own assumptions for too long. Meeting you and seeing the grace with which you handle everything has made me realize how much I need to change. The honesty in Barbara's voice left Olivia momentarily speechless. It's never too late to change, she said finally. As the families parted ways, Olivia felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. Barbara's journey of self-awareness mirrored her own in some ways, and their shared willingness to confront discomfort had brought them to a place of mutual respect. That evening, as Olivia tucked Grace in a bed, her daughter held up the toy plane Richard had given her. Mom, do you think Mr. Richard's grandson would want this back? Grace asked. Olivia smiled. I think he would be happy knowing you love it just as much. Grace hugged the plane tightly. I like them. They're nice people. They are, Olivia agreed, realizing how much those simple words encompassed. Lying in bed later that night, Olivia reflected on the connections she had made over the past few days. She had spent so much of her life bracing for judgment. Yet here she was, discovering that openness and kindness could lead to something unexpected and transformative. It wasn't just about building bridges with others, it was about tearing down the walls within herself. The following morning, Olivia felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her reflections over the past few days had been transformative, but she also knew that change was not a linear process. Challenges, both external and internal, would still arise. At breakfast, Ethan was buzzing with excitement. Mom, Dad, can we go to the Aviation Museum today? They have a real cockpit you can sit in. Marcus grinned. That sounds like a great idea. What do you think, Liv? Olivia nodded. Sure, let's make it a family adventure. As the Carters finished their meal and prepared for the outing, Olivia's phone buzzed with a message from her clinic back home. It was a patient update, one of her long-term cases that had been on her mind since the trip began. She read the message quickly and sighed with relief. Good news? Marcus asked. Yes, Olivia said. Sometimes things work out exactly as they should. The Aviation Museum was a sprawling complex filled with exhibits on flight history, interactive displays, and full-size planes. Ethan darted from one exhibit to the next, his enthusiasm infectious. Grace was more reserved, sticking close to Olivia as they explored. In the section dedicated to modern aviation, Olivia noticed a crowd forming near a display. At the center was a woman in a pilot's uniform, speaking animatedly about her career. Mom, look! Ethan exclaimed, pointing to the woman. She's a pilot. Olivia guided Grace closer as the pilot, whose name tag read Captain Emily Dawson, shared her story. She talked about her journey, the barriers she had faced as a woman in aviation, and her passion for inspiring others. I didn't see many pilots who looked like me when I was growing up, Captain Dawson said, her voice steady and confident. But I knew this was what I wanted to do, and every challenge I faced made me more determined to succeed. Olivia felt a pang of recognition in the captain's words. She glanced at her children, who were listening intently, their eyes wide with admiration. After the talk, Ethan ran up to Captain Dawson. I want to be a pilot someday. The captain knelt to his level. Then go for it. There's nothing stopping you. Ethan grinned. Thanks. Olivia stepped forward, extending her hand. Thank you for sharing your story. It is inspiring for all of us. Captain Dawson smiled. And thank you. I can tell you are raising some incredible kids. As they moved on to another exhibit, Olivia noticed a man in his 60s struggling with a map of the museum. His face was etched with frustration, and he seemed hesitant to ask for help. Are you looking for something specific? Olivia asked, approaching him with a warm smile. The man sighed in relief. Yes, actually, my grandson is obsessed with helicopters, and I promised I'd find the exhibit. But this map isn't helping much. Olivia quickly scanned the map and pointed toward the east wing. It's just down that hall. You'll see the signs. Thank you, the man said, his gratitude evident. I've been walking in circles for 10 minutes. It's no problem, Olivia replied. The man hesitated, then added, You know, kindness like this isn't as common as it should be. I appreciate it. Olivia smiled, her heart swelling. Sometimes it just takes one moment to make someone's day better. The museum visit ended with Ethan and Grace taking turns sitting in a cockpit simulator. Watching her children, Olivia felt a profound sense of hope. They were growing up in a world that still had its flaws, but they also had role models and opportunities that could inspire them to dream big. You know, Marcus said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, I think this trip has been good for all of us. Olivia nodded. It has. More than I expected. Later that evening, the family returned to their hotel to rest before dinner. As they sat in the lobby, a commotion broke out near the front desk. A middle-aged woman had collapsed, and the staff were calling for medical assistance. Without hesitation, Olivia rose to her feet and hurried to the scene. I'm a doctor, she said to the hotel staff. What happened? She just fainted, a staff member explained. We called for an ambulance, but it will take a few minutes. Olivia knelt beside the woman, checking her pulse and assessing her breathing. Ma'am, can you hear me? She asked gently. The woman stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering. Yes, I think I stood up too fast. Olivia nodded. It seems like a drop in blood pressure. Stay still for now, and we will get you some water. The staff brought water and a cold towel, which Olivia used to cool the woman's forehead. Within a few minutes, the color began to return to her face. By the time the paramedics arrived, the woman was sitting up and speaking clearly. She looked at Olivia with tears in her eyes. Thank you. You didn't have to help, but you did. Olivia smiled softly. I'm just glad you are okay. When Olivia returned to her family, Ethan was beaming. Mom, you're like a superhero, he said proudly. Olivia chuckled. I'm just doing my job, sweetie. Marcus took her hand. You have a way of being in the right place at the right time, he said. Maybe, Olivia replied, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. That night, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Olivia reflected on the day. From the pilot's inspiring story to the small acts of kindness she had witnessed and offered, it was clear that resilience and compassion could create ripples far beyond their origins. As she tucked the children into bed later, Ethan said, Mom, I think helping people is the best job in the world. Olivia kissed his forehead. It is, Ethan. It really is. As she lay down beside Marcus, Olivia felt a renewed sense of purpose. The world was far from perfect, but moments like these reminded her that hope and kindness could make all the difference. The next morning, Olivia woke to a burst of sunlight streaming through the hotel window. Marcus was already up, quietly reading on the couch while the kids played a card game on the floor. Good morning, Marcus said, smiling as she stretched. Sleep well? I did, Olivia replied, feeling a rare sense of calm. The past few days had given her plenty to reflect on, but instead of feeling burdened, she felt lighter, grateful for the journey they were on as a family. As they got ready for the day, Marcus suggested visiting the botanical gardens. The kids can run around, and we can take it easy. It is supposed to be beautiful this time of year. That sounds perfect, Olivia said. The gardens were a vibrant tapestry of color, with winding paths lined by blooming flowers and ancient trees. Grace ran ahead with Ethan, the two of them laughing as they explored a hedge maze. Olivia and Marcus strolled behind, soaking in the peaceful atmosphere. As they paused by a pond filled with koi fish, Olivia heard a familiar voice. Dr. Carter? She turned to see Barbara and Richard, both dressed casually but as polished as ever. Barbara held a small camera, and Richard had a canvas bag slung over his shoulder. Barbara, Richard, Olivia said, genuinely surprised. What brings you here? We love gardens, Barbara replied, smiling warmly. Whenever we travel, we try to find a place like this. Small world, Marcus said, shaking Richard's hand. Indeed, Richard said, his voice friendly. The couples fell into step together, sharing light conversation as they walked. Olivia noticed how different Barbara seemed, more relaxed, less guarded. At one point, Barbara turned to Olivia. I wanted to thank you again for your understanding the other night at dinner. I have spent a lot of time reflecting, and I realize now how much I have to learn. Olivia met her gaze, seeing genuine remorse and humility. It takes courage to reflect and grow, she said. I appreciate your honesty. Barbara nodded, her eyes misting slightly. My son always said that listening was the first step to understanding. I wish I had taken his advice more seriously when he was alive. Your son sounds like he was a remarkable person, Olivia said gently. He was, Barbara said, her voice trembling with both pride and sadness. As the group continued walking, Ethan ran up to them, holding a small flower he had picked. Look, Mom, isn't it pretty? It is beautiful, Olivia said, crouching to admire it. Ethan turned to Barbara. Do you like flowers too? I do, Barbara said, smiling. That one is my favorite color. Here, Ethan said, holding it out to her. Barbara took the flower, visibly touched. Thank you, Ethan. That is very kind of you. Olivia's heart swelled at the simple exchange. Moments like these, she realized, were where real change began, not in grand gestures, but in small, genuine acts of connection. Later, as they sat on a bench overlooking a rose garden, Richard struck up a conversation with Marcus about travel. Olivia listened, impressed by Richard's depth of knowledge and easy humor. Barbara leaned toward Olivia. You have a lovely family. Thank you, Olivia said. They are my greatest joy. Barbara hesitated, then said, I want you to know that meeting you has changed the way I see the world. I have spent so much of my life in a bubble, assuming things about people without truly knowing them. But you have shown me something different. Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. That means a lot, she said softly. Change is not always easy, but it is worth it. Barbara nodded. It is, and I am determined to do better. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, the families parted ways. Barbara and Richard promised to keep in touch, and Olivia felt a surprising warmth toward them. On the drive back to the hotel, Ethan and Grace chattered excitedly about their adventures in the maze. Marcus reached over to squeeze Olivia's hand. Barbara seems different, he said. She is, Olivia replied. And so am I. That evening, as Olivia sat on the hotel balcony, she reflected on the day. Barbara's words had touched her deeply, not just because of their sincerity, but because they mirrored Olivia's own journey. She had spent so much of her life protecting herself from judgment that she hadn't always allowed space for others to grow. Marcus joined her, handing her a cup of tea. Penny for your thoughts? I was just thinking about how people can surprise you, Olivia said, even when you least expect it. Marcus nodded. It has been a surprising trip, hasn't it? It has, Olivia agreed. And a good one. As they prepared for bed, Olivia received a message from Lily, the flight attendant from their journey. Hi, Dr. Carter, it read. I just wanted to thank you again for what you did during the flight. The passenger you helped is doing well, and the crew was inspired by how calm and compassionate you were. Safe travels. Olivia smiled as she read the message aloud to Marcus. You are leaving a trail of kindness everywhere you go, Marcus said. Olivia laughed softly. It feels like the world is reminding me of something I needed to hear, that kindness matters, even in the smallest ways. As she turned off the light, Olivia felt a deep sense of gratitude for her family, for the connection she had made, and for the realization that every moment held the potential for growth and understanding. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the hotel room, casting a warm glow on Olivia as she sipped her coffee. Marcus sat across from her, flipping through a travel guide, while Ethan and Grace played a game of tic-tac-toe at the small table. The trip had been everything Olivia had hoped for and more, a blend of family bonding, unexpected encounters, and moments of profound reflection. Mom, can we go back to the park today? Ethan asked, his face lighting up. I want to show Grace how to climb that big tree. I think we have time before dinner with the family, Olivia replied. But remember, safety first. Ethan saluted dramatically. Yes, ma'am. Marcus laughed. Let's pack some snacks and make a day of it. The park was alive with activity, children laughing as they chased each other, joggers weaving along the paths, and families spread out on picnic blankets. Ethan and Grace ran ahead, their energy boundless, while Olivia and Marcus strolled hand in hand. As they approached a shaded grove, Olivia noticed an elderly woman sitting alone on a bench. She looked frail but dignified, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Something about her posture caught Olivia's attention, a quiet sadness, as though she were waiting for someone who might not come. Go ahead with the kids, Olivia said to Marcus. I will catch up in a minute. Marcus nodded, giving her a curious look, but trusting her instincts. Olivia approached the woman with a warm smile. Good morning. Mind if I sit for a moment? The woman looked up, her eyes wary but kind. Not at all, she said softly. Olivia sat beside her, letting the silence settle before speaking again. It is a beautiful day, isn't it? The woman nodded, her gaze drifting to the children playing nearby. It is. Days like this remind me of when my grandchildren were young. Are they nearby? Olivia asked gently. No, the woman replied, her voice tinged with regret. They have their own lives now, scattered across the country. It is hard not to feel forgotten sometimes. Olivia's heart ached at the honesty in the woman's words. I understand, she said. Family can be complicated, but moments like this, watching the children laugh and play, can remind us of the joy they bring, even when they are far away. The woman smiled faintly. You were kind to say that. Thank you. Ethan and Grace ran over then, their cheeks flushed from running. Mom, come look at the tree we found, Ethan exclaimed. Give me a minute, Olivia said. Then, turning to the woman, she added, Would you like to join us? The woman hesitated, but then nodded. I think I would. Olivia helped her to her feet, and they walked together to where Marcus was waiting. Ethan eagerly pointed out the tree he and Grace had discovered, and the woman watched with quiet delight as the children played. Thank you, she said to Olivia, her voice barely above a whisper. You have made my day brighter. Olivia smiled. You have done the same for me. Later that afternoon, as the family packed up to leave, the woman waved to them from her bench. Ethan waved back enthusiastically, and Grace blew her a kiss. Olivia felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that a small gesture of kindness had made a difference. That evening, the Carters joined the rest of their extended family for dinner at a bustling local restaurant. The room buzzed with conversation and laughter as cousins swapped stories and aunts passed plates of food. Olivia's cousin Teresa leaned over to her at one point. You seem lighter, Liv, Teresa said, smiling knowingly. Like something has changed. Olivia considered the comment, then nodded. I think I have been reminded of what really matters: connection, kindness, and letting people in. Teresa raised her glass. To family in all its forms. To family, Olivia echoed, clinking her glass against Teresa's. After dinner, as the family walked back to their hotel, Ethan looked up at Olivia. Mom, why do you talk to so many strangers? He asked, his tone curious, not critical. Olivia smiled, kneeling to meet his eyes. Because sometimes people need someone to see them, to remind them they are not alone. And sometimes I need that reminder too. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. I like that. I do too, Olivia said, pulling him into a hug. That night, as she lay in bed, Olivia thought about the past few days. From the flight to the museum to the park. Each moment had reinforced the lesson she had been slowly learning. Kindness had a way of rippling outward, touching lives in ways she might never fully see. She glanced at Marcus, who was already asleep beside her, and then at her children, their faces peaceful in the glow of the bedside lamp. In that quiet moment, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for her family, but for the strangers who had reminded her of the power of connection. The final day of the Carters' trip began with a crisp morning breeze and a sense of anticipation. The family had plans to visit a nearby market before heading to the airport for their flight back to Chicago. Olivia packed their belongings while Marcus kept the kids entertained, ensuring the transition was smooth. As Olivia zipped the last suitcase, she paused to reflect on the trip. It had been more than just a getaway. It had been a journey of growth, not only for her, but for her entire family. Mom, can we get something for Grandma at the market? Ethan asked as they stepped into the hotel lobby. Of course, Olivia said. Let's find something special. The market was a lively mix of colors, sounds, and aromas. Stalls selling handmade jewelry, artisanal foods, and unique trinkets lined the narrow pathways. Ethan and Grace darted between vendors, their curiosity boundless. At one booth, Olivia found a set of hand-painted teacups, perfect for her mother. While she inspected them, a young vendor struck up a conversation. You are not from around here, are you? He asked politely. No, we are visiting from Chicago. Olivia replied, smiling. Well, welcome, he said warmly. Your kids have great energy. It's nice to see families enjoying this place. Thank you, Olivia said, her heart warming at the kindness in his voice. As they continued through the market, Olivia noticed Barbara and Richard at a nearby stall. She hesitated briefly, but then decided to approach them. Barbara, Richard, she called out, waving. Barbara turned, her face lighting up. Dr. Carter, what a pleasant surprise. It seems we keep running into each other, Olivia said with a laugh. Well, I believe things happen for a reason, Barbara replied, her tone thoughtful. The two couples walked together for a while, sharing stories about their families and their travels. Olivia noticed how Barbara and Richard's initial formality had softened into genuine warmth. They talked about their grandchildren, their plans to visit them more often, and their desire to stay connected with the world around them. At one point, Barbara turned to Olivia. You have taught me something I didn't expect, she said, her voice quiet but resolute. You've shown me how important it is to be open to people, to change, to kindness. I cannot thank you enough for that. Olivia felt a lump in her throat. You've taught me too, Barbara, about the power of reflection and the courage it takes to grow. The two women shared a smile, a silent acknowledgement of how far they had come since their first meeting. As the families prepared to part ways, Ethan ran up to Barbara. Do you think we will see you again? He asked. Barbara crouched to his level, her eyes twinkling. I hope so, Ethan. You are a wonderful boy, and I am so glad I got to know you. Ethan grinned. Me too. Grace handed Richard a small drawing she had made at the market. This is for you, she said shyly. Richard took the drawing, visibly moved. Thank you, Grace. I will treasure it. The ride to the airport was quiet, each family member lost in their thoughts. As they boarded the plane, Olivia felt a mix of emotions. She was eager to return home, but also deeply grateful for the experiences that had shaped their trip. The first-class cabin felt familiar now, almost like a second home. Olivia settled into her seat, watching Ethan and Grace with pride as they organized their belongings. You know, Marcus said, leaning toward her, this trip turned out to be more than I expected. Olivia nodded. For me too. It has been a reminder of what matters most. Midway through the flight, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have clear skies ahead and will be arriving in Chicago on schedule. I want to thank each of you for being part of this journey today. It's moments like these that remind us how interconnected we all are. Safe travels. The words resonated deeply with Olivia. She glanced at her family, her heart full of gratitude. As the plane began its descent, Ethan tugged on her sleeve. Mom, what's your favorite part of the trip? Olivia thought for a moment. Seeing how kind people can be, she said. Ethan smiled. Me too. When the plane landed and the Carters stepped into the bustling terminal, Olivia felt a sense of closure. The trip had taught her lessons she hadn't expected. Lessons about kindness, resilience, and the importance of connection. As they retrieved their luggage, Olivia noticed Barbara and Richard standing nearby, waving goodbye. Olivia waved back, a quiet promise in her heart to carry the spirit of this journey into her everyday life. The Carters' return to Chicago was greeted by the crisp chill of a Midwestern autumn. As they stepped out of the airport and into the family car, which a close friend had graciously parked for them, Olivia took a deep breath of the familiar air. It feels good to be home, Marcus said as he loaded their luggage into the trunk. Yeah, Ethan agreed, looking out at the skyline in the distance. But I like the trip too. Can we go back one day? Olivia smiled. We'll see, buddy. There are always more adventures to come. Grace clutched her stuffed bunny as she climbed into the car, already looking drowsy. I miss Grandma, she murmured. Me too, Olivia said, gently tucking a blanket around her. The drive home was quiet, the children nodding off in the back seat as Marcus navigated the familiar streets. Olivia gazed out the window, reflecting on how much had changed in just a few days. The trip had been about reconnecting with family, but it had also become a journey of self-discovery. Olivia had confronted old wounds, experienced the unexpected kindness of strangers, and witnessed the power of human connection in its simplest, most profound forms. When they arrived home, Olivia carried Grace inside while Marcus guided Ethan, who stumbled sleepily through the front door. The house felt warm and inviting, a haven after days of travel. As the kids were tucked into their beds, Marcus joined Olivia in the kitchen, where she was unpacking a few of the items they had brought back from Dallas. She unwrapped the hand-painted teacups, smiling as she set them on the counter. "Those are going to look great at your mom's house," Marcus said. Olivia nodded. "They will. It's a small thing, but it'll make her happy." Later that evening, as the house settled into silence, Olivia sat on the couch with a notebook in hand. She had always found writing therapeutic, a way to process her thoughts and capture moments she didn't want to forget. She began jotting down the highlights of the trip. Ethan and Grace experiencing first class for the first time, the unexpected bond with Barbara and Richard, the woman at the park who reminded her of the importance of being seen, Captain Dawson's inspiring words at the museum. As she wrote, Olivia realized how each moment had contributed to a larger lesson. Life wasn't about avoiding discomfort or protecting herself from judgment. It was about embracing connection, even when it felt vulnerable. The next morning, Olivia decided to stop by her clinic before officially returning to work the following day. As she entered the building, she was greeted warmly by the staff, who asked eagerly about her trip. "It was wonderful," Olivia said, her smile genuine. When she reached her office, she found a note on her desk from one of her colleagues. "Dr. Carter, the family of the patient you helped stabilize on your flight called to thank you. They were amazed by your kindness and professionalism. You always go above and beyond." Olivia sat down, reading the note twice. It was a small acknowledgement, but it meant the world to her. That afternoon, Olivia picked up Ethan and Grace from school. As they walked home, Ethan shared a story about a new friend he had made during recess. He was sitting by himself, so I asked if he wanted to play, Ethan said. He said yes, and we built a huge fort out of sticks. "That was kind of you," Olivia said, her voice warm with pride. Ethan shrugged. "You always say kindness matters, so I thought I'd try it." Olivia stopped walking and knelt to his level. "It does matter, Ethan. It matters more than anything." Grace hugged Olivia's leg, chiming in, "You are the kindest mom." Olivia laughed softly, her heart full. "Thank you, Grace. That means a lot." That evening, the family gathered around the dining table for dinner. The conversation was lively, filled with laughter and stories. Olivia watched her family, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. As the kids cleared their plates, Marcus leaned toward Olivia. "Thinking about the trip again?" he asked. "I am," she admitted. "It reminded me of so many things, how much kindness can change lives, how important it is to let people in, and how resilient we can be when we face challenges together." Marcus reached for her hand. "You've always been that way, Liv. This trip just brought it into focus." After the children were in bed, Olivia sat down to finish her notebook entry. She wrote, "Kindness is not just an act, it is a choice, a mindset, a way of being. It is the quiet courage to reach out, the patience to listen, and the strength to forgive. This trip reminded me of that truth and gave me the courage to carry it forward. I hope my children grow up knowing that kindness is the most powerful tool we have to change the world." Closing the notebook, Olivia felt at peace. As she turned off the lights and joined Marcus in bed, she whispered, "I think this was one of the best trips we've ever taken." Marcus smiled. "I think you're right." In the quiet of the night, Olivia drifted off to sleep, her heart full of hope. The journey to Dallas had been more than a family trip. It had been a journey home to herself, a reminder of the power of perseverance, kindness, and connection. As Olivia drifted off to sleep, the lessons from their journey stayed with her, gentle reminders of the transformative power of kindness, connection, and resilience. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey with Olivia and her family. If this story inspired you, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share with others who may need a reminder of the power of kindness and hope. Stay tuned for more uplifting stories that celebrate the beauty of humanity.